Let's look at supervision issues for probation and parole. And this is primarily where we see the overlap and why people tend to kind of lump them together, even though they shouldn't be, because the supervision issues are similar, okay? So you can see on the picture here, part of supervision of offenders in the community is through office visits, which probation and parole officers get updates on the activities of their clients. So we have standard conditions for parolees. These are conditions that every single offender gets. Right? You're on probation, you're on parole, you get a set of standard conditions. Everybody has to follow those. You have this in your course pack handouts on e-learning. This is a probation order. And what you basically see here is all of the standard conditions. So this order goes to everybody. And the standard conditions go all the way through number 8, and then 9 says other. Use this space for conditions or for whatever else you need to do. And then on parole, right, we have conditions 1 through 6. Those are standard conditions. Then we have special conditions. Now that's what really makes this stuff work for probation and parole both. It's the special conditions, not the standard ones. Everybody has to do those. The special conditions say, you, individual, what do we need to get you, individual, back on the path of righteousness? So the special conditions meet the needs of the specific offender. And that's what makes it work. So we look at that specific offender and we say, what do they need so they don't recidivate? Do they need substance abuse counseling or treatment? Well, let's do that. Random drug testing, because we don't trust anybody and we verify all. So we're not going to say, so did you use any drugs last week, parolee? Oh no, I didn't. Okay, we're good. Right? Not going to happen. We're going to say, parolee, go drop. And so we're going to do drug testing. Specific hours and curfews, because most people get in trouble after dark. So let's keep them in during those trouble hours. That they must seek gainful employment, acknowledging that it might not be possible for them to find employment because of the economy or because of that convict stigma. Nobody wants to hire a felon, right? But that they're at least out there making the effort. Education or vocational training. Now that's a little bit harder to mandate because it costs money, so unless the person can get grants or their folks are paying for it. I was at a sentencing one time when I was a court officer, and the judge was a really cool judge. He's passed on now, but I was very privileged to have worked in his court. And he looked at an offender and he's flipping through the PSI and he looks at the offender and he says, it says here that you've been a student at Delta College. And the offender says, why yes. Well, young man, how are you paying for your college? And he says, well, my parents are paying for it. Are they here? And his parents stand up. And so the judge says to the parents, are you going to continue to pay for his college? And they said, yes, Your Honor, we are. So the judge says, all right, then part of your probation is that you finish your degree. And he wrote it, court order. I thought that was kind of cool. Restricted associations. We're going to tell you who you can and cannot hang out with. Obviously, you can't go anywhere near the victim if you had a victim. But if you're hanging out with other troublemakers, other felons, we're not going to let you do that either. We might tell you that you have to go to mental health counseling. I mean, this list can go on and on and on. We're going to look at the specific offender and figure out what it takes to get them right. There you are on parole, special conditions. Now let's look at supervision styles. There's two main ones. And they're kind of, I don't know, in theory, diametrically opposed. But you've got the casework style, where you're focusing on assisting offenders. And you've got the surveillance style, where you're focusing on monitoring and enforcing compliance. So on one side, you got kind of Officer Fluffy that's just trying to help everybody and seem kumbaya and hold hands. And on the other side, you got Officer Lock 'em Up, that if you even look cross-eyed at him, he's going to throw you back in prison. Okay. Neither of those in the extreme work. So here's what you're going to do to be a good officer. Right? If we put casework style here, and we'll put surveillance style there on the continuum. Right? You don't want to be over here or over here. You want to be somewhere in the middle. Don't be afraid to check your offenders if they're screwing up. But on the other hand, don't be on them like white on rice either, so that every time they screw up, they're going to get bounced back, because either way, you're not helping anybody. Right? When you let them get away with everything, you're not helping them any. Imagine that if that was a child and you just let them do whatever they want. And imagine if this is a child over here and you're stepping on them every time they try to do anything. And so you want to make that middle ground someplace. But here's where the burnout comes. It's very hard to be in the middle. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. It's way easier to say yes, 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 or no, no, no. And so what happens over the course of time is, because it is very difficult to maintain that middle ground, you'll see officers migrating one way or the other just because it's easier. It's less stressful. And when that happens, right, the further they migrate either way, when that happens, they cease to be effective officers. It's time to make a move. It's time to jump into something else. And that's the nice thing about state employment, is you've got a lot of other employment opportunities besides just that job. But that's when you need to be kind of cognizant of the fact that you're migrating one way or the other and you're not being effective anymore. Now, both styles include office visits by offenders. They have to come to your office, that you're going to contact their employers, and that you're going to visit their home. Both styles include that. But it's just a matter of degree on the supervision thing. So probation parole is high burnout. So just heads up on that if that's where you're thinking about going. Probation parole is high burnout, and it's because of this here. It's because of trying to make that middle ground all the time. Both styles also include determining program needs and placement in treatment programs as they're needed. Caseload types. We got the regular caseloads, and those are pretty much what they sound like they ought to be. Just, the regular run-of-the-mill for standard offenders who need only minimal to moderate supervision. They're going to be compliant, they're going to follow the rules, they're not going to give you a lot of crap. Because of that, we see high caseload numbers. So a parole or probation officer that has caseloads of just regular caseloads is probably going to be looking at, maybe 150 to 300 individuals on their caseload. Now you might say, well, that seems like a lot, but if supervision entails them coming to your office once a month, or a phone call once a month or something like that, well, it's not really that hard to monitor that many people. But then we have our intensive supervision caseloads, and these are our high-risk offenders, people who we know are not going to be compliant, and we need to ride their back. We need to be all over them, because they're about that far from being sentenced to prison. Right? They're about that far. This is the last-ditch effort. So we don't want them to go to prison. It costs a lot of money to put them in prison. We want them to be successful, but we are going to ride their ass. We're going to be all over them. So low caseload numbers here, vicinity of around 25 because of extensive contact. So you're this probation or parole officer, and you leave your home in the morning, to get to your office for 8 a.m. And you look, no, it's 7:30, and I know Fred's working at that auto shop there on the way, and I'm just going to swing by and check up on Fred. Hey, Fred, how's it going? And you get to your office, and you do your office work, and you say, hey, I'm going to call Sam up. Hey, Sam, how's it going? And, I think I'm going to go out in the field today. And so you go out in the field and you stop by this person's workplace, this person's home. You make a few more phone calls when you're on the road like that. You could conceivably contact half of your caseload in one day. And you're going to have them coming in for randoms. I mean, you are going to be on them. We have special caseloads for offenders with specific problems. So mental illness, sex offenders, substance abusers, people like that. And again, we've got a low caseload number. Yes, sir.
Are some of the probation parole officers, is one a intensive and one's a regular, or?
That is a good question. The question was, are in some probation offices or parole offices, do they just do one style? And the answer is yes and no. It depends on where you work. Some offices say, okay, you've got all the intensive, you've got all the specials, and you've got standard caseloads. Other ones kind of mix and match, and they weight the caseload numerically by the amount of effort that is involved to manage that caseload.
Some of it is our comfortability.
So that way everybody has approximately the same amount of work.
It gets stressful for, 250 regular and then 25 intensive.
Right, yeah, they usually, most offices kind of commingle them, but not always. So it depends on the office that you're working in. I know some that definitely want their special caseloads assigned just to one person, because they can manage, like sex offenders. You got sex offenders, you got the mentals like that. So it depends on the office, and every office makes its own work rules. If that makes sense. May include GPS monitoring. Everybody says, oh yeah, so we'll know exactly where they are all the time. Well, it depends on where you live. Because if you're out in the boonies, a lot of times the weather, the trees, and everything can interfere. I spent the day doing a ride along with a probation parole officer. I spent the day in the office. And that happened a couple of times during the day. They had a sex offender who went off the grid. And it triggers an alarm down in Lansing that makes them a violator. So he says, let's take a ride out and see what's going on. So we got out there and the guy was home. He was doing everything he was supposed to be doing, but the weather or the trees or something. So, the officer had him come step outside and it reset the GPS and everything was cool. But happens. Special alcohol monitoring, what they call SCRAM, a little device that you wear on your leg. And it's very accurate. A lot of people try to trip it up with bologna and all kinds of other stuff, putting it between their skin and it doesn't work. Discharge. Yay! You've successfully completed your probation or parole. That's a good thing. Revocation, not a good thing. No, you did not successfully complete. You screwed up. And we might take your probation or parole away. Now, you can get a violation from a technical violation. That is, you do something that is not against the law, but you were supposed to in your terms and conditions. So you didn't go to counseling or something like that. And so we can issue a warrant and call you before the court and have a little come to Jesus meeting with you. Or new crime violations. You commit a new crime, well, all bets are off now. So those are the two things that get people in trouble. They either commit a new crime or they don't do something that they're supposed to do.